Hi. Yes, you are very cute. Do I have to take you outside? Ooh, you're gonna knock me over. You're so cute. You're such a cute little shag monster. A cute little shag monster. Hello, my name is Briar. Welcome to my AuthorTube channel. Today, as we are gearing up to get started with NaNoWriMo, we are about a week and a half out from November 1st, where everyone's going to get started if you're doing a traditional nano. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, NaNoWriMo, everyone tries to write 50,000 words in the month of November. And if you're doing it the traditional way, then on November 1st, you start writing a brand new project. So I have done and won NaNoWriMo traditionally twice. Every other time that I've won, I have won as a rebel, where I was either completing a previous work, working on multiple stories, and then just sort of combining all of my words that I wrote in the month into my nano words, or something similar. But twice I have won by starting a brand new novel on November 1st, and both times I actually wrote 50,000 words in 30 days, and I also wrote the end on the first draft on November 30th, on or around November 30th. So a lot of that I will credit to the pre-writing work that I did in October. Now, if you're anything like I was last year, then it is November 22nd, 23rd or so, whenever this video comes up, and it's getting close to endgame for Preptober. And maybe you're just now starting to think, I kind of do want to do a traditional nano. Maybe I do want to start something new on November 1st. Oh God, it's almost the end of October. How am I going to prepare? So in this video, I have 3 methods that I have used to successfully plot a novel that I wrote for NaNoWriMo in 2018. These 3 methods start wide. It starts with a wide breadth overview, like a bird's eye view of your novel. And then with the 2 successive pieces, they get narrower and narrower, so that you're adding more detail, you're defining more of what your story is going to look like as you go through. So if you're starting to prepare for NaNoWriMo and you've got 3 days before November 1st, maybe you're only going to do the first part. If you've got more time, maybe you're going to do 1 and 2, and you're going to narrow in closer to what your novel is going to look like. You're going to do more plotting. If you decide to take an entire 3 days to focus really hard on preparing for nano, and all you're going to be doing is preparing, but you don't want to start writing the work yet, then maybe you'll do all 3 and really dive into what your novel's going to be. So for your novel prep part 1, the wide bird's eye view of your story, what you can do is you can start by writing your premise. So the premise of your story is really just sort of getting your ideas, all of the ideas you might have about this story, and putting them on paper in a way that's going to fuel your writing, that's going to ignite your curiosity about what's going to happen in your story. So the premise has 4 or 5 parts to it. It starts with the regular world of your character, just like the situation that you're going to open up to, your opening image, if you want to use Save the Cat. So you start with, this is normal, everyday, this is what's happening in the world of my characters. You're going to define who your characters are. You can do that as much or as little as you want. You can just give a name and age. You can give name, age, and appearance, something special about them, but you don't really have to go too deep into your one main character. If you have more main characters, then maybe just a short snippet on each of them. But especially for NaNoWriMo, I recommend having one main character, someone that you can follow through everything, and then all the other characters can be defined either as you're writing or in edits later. You want to also give the inciting incident and like the central conflict. So you have your normal world, your character, and then the change, the shift. Why are we reading this person's story? What happens to them? I tend to write paranormal stories, so the shift is generally either the introduction to magic or something similar, something in the magic world changes. So your inciting incident and the conflict that's going to push through the story. You can also use this as a time to define your antagonist, whether that be a physical character that's going to come and fight your main character, or if that's going to be just the situation itself and how it gets progressively worse. But you do want to give the conflict. You really need to have the conflict in the premise, because even if all you're writing is a single paragraph about the situation the character starts in, the characters, the conflict, and the antagonist, that conflict piece is going to be what drives all of your writing moving forward. If you don't have conflict, you don't have a story. So for your wide view of the story, that's really all you need. You need who your characters are, where they are, and what's wrong. Ideally, you might also have a vision of how they resolve that conflict, how that's going to end. But if you don't have that, if you have 5 minutes to sit down on October 31st and be like, this is the story that I'm going to write, then you have your premise. You know what your story is about, and you can start writing on November 1st. I use the strategy of writing a premise, and actually I used all of these strategies over the month of October in 2018 when I was writing my first traditional nano. And for me, that ended up looking like this. I wrote out like I needed the situation, the protagonist, the inciting incident, and the conflict and opponent. And I just sort of wrote those words out, gave a couple sentences, and then tried to free write a little paragraph about more detail to try to tie it all together. So I had less than a page of this little 5x6, 5x8 notebook. So this is really simple. Again, you can do this in 5 minutes. Write your premise, and you're ready to write for NaNoWriMo. This next plotting strategy moves from the bird's eye overview of the premise and gets a little more detailed. And this is a method of plotting. So if you're a true pantser, you're going to stop at the premise, you're not going to write anymore. You might do some free writes to define your characters, define your conflict, define your setting, all of those things. But if you really want to get into plotting, but you don't have a whole lot of time, you can try to use the Plot Embryo. The Plot Embryo is a plotting method inspired by the hero's journey. And I'll be honest, I used this in 2018 for this specific project, and then I never used it again. It was not my cup of tea. I didn't enjoy it too much, but it has its uses, especially if you're getting ready for NaNoWriMo and you don't have a whole lot of time to figure out all of the detailed things that we're going to get into in step 3. So if you want to use the Plot Embryo method, I'm going to link the video that describes it in much better detail than I ever could, because again, I used this 4 years ago and I haven't even touched it since. It's not really my bag, but it might be yours, which is why I'm still including it. So for this, the Plot Embryo sort of breaks your story into 8 parts. 4 parts that are sort of the Act 1, getting into the plot, where you establish your character in their normal world. Something goes wrong, they have their debate, will I, won't I, and then they're thrust into the meat of the story. They're going into, this is what they have to do in order to defeat the bad guy, win the girl, do the things, I don't know, whatever your story's about. Wizard of Oz is a classic story where she goes into Oz. That is the new world that she has to explore, find her way through, and find her way home. So that's the Plot Embryo, where you start in your regular world, something happens, the inciting incident that thrusts your character into something new. And the best part about the plot embryo is you don't give it too much detail when you're outlining with this method. You have only 8 pieces. So when I did the plot embryo, I took those 8 pieces and I sort of evenly divided my notebook paper. So if we look at my notebook, the same writer's notebook that I made all my notes in for this Preptober, it took up 2 pages. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side, 6, 7, 8 on the other side. And I just went through each step of the plot embryo and sort of gave a sentence or two about what that's going to look like in my story. It's not too detailed. It's not a whole lot of information that you're trying to dig out of your creative memory. It's not going to constrain you into a solid outline of your story. So you still have a lot of wiggle room. This is great for pantsers who just want some kind of guide into NaNoWriMo just so that you can keep up the momentum. Because if you're anything like me, if you're just straight pantsing something, you might get to the inciting incident and get lost in the weeds, where you're just exploring all of the possibilities of what could happen if this really happened to the character. If this character really got sucked into this new world and you're trying to define the world. You're trying to do all of the world building and exposition, and the next thing you know, you've written 6 pages of your novel and no one has said anything because you're talking about the color of the bushes. That may or may not have happened to me in the past. But having this 8-block plot embryo structure is just a way to keep the forward momentum. Just keep going, so you're not going to get as lost in the weeds as you would if you didn't have any sort of end result in mind. If you're like me, and you decided to use the entire month of October to prepare, and you've done free writes, and you've figured out your premise, and you kind of have a plot germinating in your brain that may or may not have been given shape through the plot embryo. And it's coming to the end of October, but you're not in November yet. And you want to write, but you also want to start on November 1st. So maybe you want to experiment with a more detailed plotting method. And this detailed plotting method I'm talking about comes from the wonderful booktuber Katytastic. I have watched her videos since forever. Feels like anyway, probably since college. It's been a while. And when I was first exploring different ways to plot, I discovered her video about her 9-block, 27-chapter plotting method, where she took the 3 acts, broke each act into 3 parts to make the 9 blocks, and broke each of those blocks into 3 parts to then make the 27 chapters. And each of those chapters she outlines with greater detail in the videos linked in the description. I'm not even going to try to emulate it, but each of those blocks has a purpose. And you can use those blocks to create a very detailed plot outline of your story. And then you'll have the beginning, the middle, the end, all before November 1st if you're insane and would like to write so much plot before you start writing. Again, that might be your jam. You might be an excellent plotter where you plot everything to detail. You might use the snowflake method, which I think I still can't wrap my head around. If anyone can explain the snowflake method of plotting a story in the comments or link me to a video that explains it better, I can't wrap my head around that. That's too much. Can't do it. Cannot do the thing. But if that's your jam, maybe you want to try it. I will say, when I did this for my Demons Deliverance novel for 2018, I put a lot of effort into it. If we go into my notebook from that time, I told you I did 1 page for the premise, and that wasn't even a full page. I had 2 pages for the plot embryo, and a lot of free writing. And then came the 27 chapters method, where I started here, and I've got 1.5 pages for Act 1, some other pages in the middle that are not related to plotting, but are free writes. Got another 2 pages that outline Act 2. And I've got a full 2-page spread that outlines Act 3. So again, for comparison, the premise, 1 page. The plot embryo, 2 pages. The 27 chapter plotting method from Katytastic, 6 pages. And that's just the pages that are in this little notebook. That's not even counting all of the free writes that went into germinating the ideas for this, or whatever I typed up on my computer before this when I was maybe outlining it in Scrivener index cards or what have you. That is a lot. 6 pages is a lot for me of plotting. And honestly, that's probably where I went wrong. I had the premise. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of free writes. I had a general story circle, plot embryo, what have you, hero's journey for my main character. Some general ideas, nothing too detailed. And then I spent about a week and a half before November 1st plotting out 27 scenes and chapters and what have you. And that's probably where I went wrong. Because I, when writing, wanted to stay true to what I had imagined in those 27 chapters, when really half of those were completely unnecessary to the goal of the story. They weren't really developing the characters. It was just cool ideas that I had of things that I wanted to write way back in October before I even got into actually writing the story. This is why I don't plot as detailed anymore. I've learned my lesson. Again, what works for me might not work for you. What works for you might not work for me. These are methods that I have tried, that I have loved in the process of, and regret afterwards, but not really, because I got a great story out of it. I really enjoy my Demons novel. It is a lot longer, it is a lot better, it is a lot tighter after 2 years of editing, but that first 50,000 words that I made in the month of November was kind of magical. So those are my 3 methods. More details linked in videos down below for people who would actually like to try any of these. Are you plotting for the month of October? Have you been preparing all year for this NaNoWriMo? Or are you maybe thinking, hey, maybe I'll write something this month, this next month, and you're just getting started right now? I would love to hear more from you. Have you won NaNoWriMo in the past? Are you more of a plotter to win or a pantser to win? Have you won using a method that was not ideal for you and your style? Let me know. I'm curious about your NaNoWriMo experiences, your Preptober experiences. Have you tried to outline using any of these methods? If you've used Katytastic's 27 chapters, I want to know more about how you felt. Did it help you really build out this story before you started writing? Or did you feel constrained by all the details you prepared that maybe weren't right for your story? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see y'all next weekend. Thank you so much, and good luck in your Preptobering. Have a great day. Does anybody else sit on the floor to film YouTube videos? Because I've been doing it off and on, and usually I'm okay with that. But for some reason today I decided to sit in a stupid way, and now my legs are asleep. So, how do y'all film videos? There's a question. Are you surrounded by dogs who sigh and make random noises? Are you filming in the middle of the workday when you should probably be working? I have questions. I'm curious. I want to know. I'm stuck and I can't hit the turn off recording because my leg is waking up.